Good morning, members of the media, wider viewing and listening public of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you all very much for joining me at fairly short notice on a Sunday morning, a week before a general election. And whilst there is right now ongoing a National Day of Prayer that unfortunately I could not attend because I thought it necessary to ask you all to attend here today to give me the opportunity to just address a topic that, quite frankly, has me quite disturbed as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, and then also at a personal level. As you are all aware, in 2014, I offered myself for public service. First of all, being asked to be a temporary opposition senator under Dr. Keith Rowley, a PNM senator temporarily, sitting on a number of occasions, and then later on to put myself up for electoral politics in 2015 and elected to office in September 2015 for Port of Spain North St. Anne's West. I have had the opportunity and the privilege to serve in a number of different governmental roles at the behest of the Prime Minister, even earning at times the name Minister of Everything. I first was appointed Minister in the Office of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs. Shortly thereafter, added to that portfolio, was also Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. Sometime thereafter, added to those two, was the Minister of Communications. Thereafter, not too long thereafter, I was then made the Minister of National Security, as well as the Minister of Communications, as well as Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. And then, sometime after that, the Minister of Communication, current Minister of Communication, Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, was appointed, and that was removed from my portfolio. So I currently hold the portfolio, which is a privilege for me, serving Trinidad and Tobago, of Minister of National Security and Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. I have always conducted myself mindful that it is important for me to protect the dignity of whatever office I serve in. I can tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago without fear of contradiction that I am an office holder. I recognize that currently I hold office and that I may not hold office, and I certainly don't intend to hold office for the rest of my life. But whilst I am in any office serving the public of Trinidad and Tobago, one promise I'm prepared to make is I will do so with dignity and to the best of my ability. I am also very mindful that I must protect office, whatever office I hold, but also the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and I've made it my duty to stand steadfast for the last 5 years, protecting you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, in whatever role I play, whether it be sitting opposite the most sophisticated energy companies in the world and negotiating for better deals for you, whether it be as your Minister of National Security taking on crime and criminality, whether it be as the Chairman of Finance and General Purposes Committee, ensuring that taxpayers get the best value for money, and also as a simple member of Cabinet. Just to give persons an understanding of how Cabinet works. Cabinet is a gathering under the guidance of the Prime Minister, who chairs the meeting of all his ministers that he asks to sit around the table. Every week, we get a number of Cabinet notes. We, in the last 5 years, have sat and determined thousands of Cabinet notes, and that is not an exaggeration. You sit, a note comes before you from various ministries, we discuss it, and it is either passed, is sent to Finance and General Purposes Committee for further deliberation, or it is withdrawn because it is rejected by Cabinet at that time. This is how Cabinet goes. You sit on many, many notes. From day one, I took a very, very careful decision and deliberate decision in my service to Trinidad and Tobago to always make sure that I did not find myself in any conflict of interest, real, potential, or otherwise, because I am very aware of the mischief that can occur and how people can try to spin and swing things. So I declared conflicts of interest on matters of principle, on matters of integrity, and simply to avoid any potential conflict of interest. And that is the proper way to conduct oneself in public life. Just over a year and a half ago, all of a sudden, a narrative sprung up from the opposition. A disturbing narrative to me personally. But I know and I've learned in public life that your political opponents will always try to find some way to attack or to undermine you. That's par for the course, and I accept that. It isn't fun, it isn't nice, but it's just a fact of political life, that they will always try to find something, attack you, undermine you. Never in my wildest dreams entering into public life did I think that persons who are supposed to be responsible, who hold public office, parliamentarians, members of the opposition, persons who are asking the country to elect them and to vote them into office, would make up complete lies, and will be deceptive and try to mislead the public through the media. I have always respected the media. I've interacted with the media a lot more since being in public life, and I've found the media generally to be very responsible and to uphold the tenets of responsible journalism. And that is something I applaud and I'll always encourage. As I look around the room this morning, and I see the faces of many of you I've interacted with, each of you would be able to recall conversations like that personally at certain times. But for persons to make up complete lies about me as an official in public life, maybe at some level I can accept that. But when you then begin, because you cannot find anything on me personally, no element of wrongdoing by me as a public officer and official for 4 to 5 years, because it simply does not exist. I've always protected office, I've always protected Trinidad and Tobago and the taxpayers. You cannot even find someone saying I took Stuart Young for drinks. Stuart Young came to my house. Stuart Young accepted an invitation for dinner other than a handful of official dinner invitations I accepted. I never even stayed the full course, and mostly with multinational energy companies when we were negotiating just to try and get us over the line and to protect Trinidad and Tobago to get better deals. You cannot find anything on me. The opposition then began to resort to attacks on my family, in particular my younger brother, Angus Young, and then most recently my father, who has served this country for decades, known as a man of integrity, and I'll get into that in a short while. That is when the opposition stepped over the line for me. I still remain dignified as they began, first of all, questioning in Parliament whether my brother, who is the CEO of NCBGF, was getting any deals from the government. I remember the first time I was sitting in Parliament on a Friday afternoon, and Minister Imbert, who sits next to me, provided me with a written answer, a question asked by Rudal Munilal as to how many deals and transactions, this was in 2018 or 2019, that bank had gotten. And I was shocked to see they had even gotten any, because at that stage, those transactions were state transactions that I was completely unfamiliar with. And the first time I heard or saw of those transactions, there was a UDCOT one and an NFM one, and then some energy company, state-owned energy company, was when Minister Imbert showed me that answer in Parliament, because none of them came before the cabinet. They then began this attack on that small, what they call a small banking institution. But the truth is, the NCB group is the second largest indigenous group in the whole Caribbean, financial group in the whole Caribbean. The only financial group that is indigenous to the Caribbean that is bigger than NCB is Republic Bank. They are the second largest. And then to hear the attacks on my brother pained me at the time, but again, I accepted it as part of public office. The record would reflect that I rejected all of the spurious attacks that were being led at the time, none other than by the leader of the opposition, Kamla Prasad Bisesa, and the leader of opposition business in the Senate, Wade Mark. I went so far at one stage when Wade Mark stood up on a political platform in Diego Martin and defamed my brother and myself to issue with him a pre-action protocol letter, him suggesting that somehow there had been influence. I'd like to take the opportunity to just explain a few things. But what was being led at the time by the leader of the opposition, Kamla Prasad Bisesa, and Mr. Wade Ma, attacking my brother and myself, disturbed me. That pre-action protocol letter was issued. His lawyer, Anand Ramlogan, issued a response. My lawyers said, let us pursue the action, and I told them, put it on hold. Not because I fear that I would not win in court, but I just generally did not think at that time the dignity of the office needed me to be engaging in these litigious matters. That time has now come and that time has now passed, and I will be pursuing legal action. Within the last few days, well, what happened, thereafter, is I responded on a number of occasions in Parliament. A number of my parliamentarian colleagues also responded, rejecting the suggestions, and I thought it had come to an end there. My brother's bank out of Jamaica put out full-page ads in the newspaper defending NCBGF, and then my brother also, within recent times, put out his own personal statement without any consultation with me whatsoever. We have never discussed any of the business that he tenders for and any of the business that the state does. That is simply how the Young family carries itself. There is no discussion whatsoever, ever, between my brother and myself. And that is why I didn't take this on at all, because I just knew there was no truth in it whatsoever. I also took the precaution at every cabinet meeting where I thought there could be any conflict of interest to recuse myself. Towards the end of cabinet, it became, there's something buzzing. Towards the end of cabinet, I actually started to be chided. But once again, I'm recusing myself. And I held steadfast to my colleagues. And I was recusing myself not because I was afraid of anything or not because I could influence anything or there was anything to influence. And I'll explain the categories that I recuse myself from in a short while. Why I've called this news conference here today is because the UNC has stepped over the line now in attacking my family with my father and my brother. And I just want to put on record a reminder to the population. Richard Young has served this country for decades, not only in private sector. It started as far back as under the NAR government, not a PNM government, the NAR government. He was on a state board under Prime Minister Robinson. He served on the National Housing Authority board. Under Prime Minister Basdeo Pandey in 1999, UNC government, not a PNM government, Richard Young was appointed the chairman of the Implementation Committee for Y2K. I don't know how many of you all can remember Y2K. It was the changeover to the year 2000, and the whole world was concerned that electronics, computers, everything would collapse because it would not be able to read the number moving from 1999 to 2000. Richard Young, under Basdeo Pandey government, a UNC government, chaired the National Y2K Committee. Nothing under PNM. 2013, under Prime Minister Kamla Prasad Bisesa, they and her cabinet appointed Richard Young to be the chairman of the Economic Development Board, which he chaired from 2013 to early 2015. At that time, I'd been selected as the PNM's candidate for Port of Spain North St. Anne's West, and he thought it best to relieve himself and the then government from that post. That is who Richard Young is, always about national service and giving his service. My brother, Angus Young, who's my younger brother, as I said, is the CEO of NCBGF, a Jamaican-owned bank in Trinidad and Tobago. And now I'd like to talk about what goes on. First of all, with every Ministry of Finance financing, those are the ones that come to cabinet. So the NFM deal, the UDCOT deals, those may not have come to cabinet. They didn't. I certainly never saw them. The Ministry of Finance, whenever it wants to borrow money or is helping a state enterprise via government guaranteed loan borrowing money, puts out a competitive invitation to tender to all financial institutions in Trinidad. Answer Merchant Bank, Bank of Baroda, Republic Bank, Royal Bank, Scotia Bank, FCB, NCB, GF, and others. Everyone, not dependent on your size. I think they're about 12 or somewhere thereabouts. The technocrats at the Ministry of Finance then analyze those and do their analysis, and then will recommend to Cabinet via Cabinet note who should be awarded the transaction. That is how competitive tendering for financing is done. Up to 2018, so for 3 years into the term, not a single one was awarded to NCBGF. Not a single one. And then they were awarded the first one. From day one, from the time I saw any cabinet note that mentioned NCBGF, I recused myself. At the time I was asked by my colleagues, but they're not even successful, they're not even close to being successful. Why are you recusing myself? I said, I think it is a decent and proper thing to do. I'm not going to participate. They said, but there's nothing to even discuss with NCBGF because they're not even in the running. They're not recommended. They're not in the top 3. They're not in the top 5. I recuse myself from day one. And that is how I've conducted myself. They continued to attack. Ads were put out. The Ministry of Finance put out an ad saying that NCBGF had only won 3.4% of total government financing over the period of time under this PNM administration. 3.4%. So no matter what the UNC screams, Kamala Prasad Bissessar and her minions scream to try and say that why is this small bank winning these deals, but they don't say winning. They say Stuart Young giving it, but Stuart Young never participates in it. Every single one is a competitive tender. They've only won 3.4%. And it is not a small institution. They're the second largest indigenous institution in Trinidad and Tobago. And I want the country to understand this. One of the first things the Keith Rowley government had to do when we came into office, and I went with the Prime Minister, is fly to Jamaica to mend what the Kamala Prasad Bissessar government had done, which was the destruction of the relationship between Trinidad and Jamaica. They are intent on doing that once again to the detriment of Trinidad and Tobago. Because when you're attacking the largest financial institution in Jamaica and attacking the largest business in Jamaica, that is exactly what they're doing. Because the Young family doesn't own the bank. My brother is merely an employee of the bank. What then began to happen as of last week, which is where it pushed it over the line, on Thursday night, apparently there was a UNC meeting somewhere, and the leader of the opposition began to suggest certain things with respect to me. One of their supporters had written to the Office of the Prime Minister, the Cabinet Secretariat, on June 9th, 2020, asking under the Freedom of Information Act for certain information. He wrote asking through his attorneys for copies of all Cabinet notes and minutes for matters in respect of which either the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Mr. Faris Al-Rawi, and or the Minister of National Security, Mr. Stuart Young, has recused themselves. Immediately when this was brought to my attention, I told the Cabinet Secretariat, seek legal advice with respect to what has to be given, because Cabinet notes and minutes are protected and are exempt under the Act, but you must give the information, because I have nothing to hide. So I am on record as telling the Cabinet Secretariat, please provide the information, how many times I've recused myself and what I've recused myself from. That information was provided on the 7th of July to an individual through his attorneys, once again, Anand Ramlogan's chambers, and it was provided. And I am providing you, the members of the media here today, with a copy of the letter from the Cabinet Secretariat to Freedom Law Chambers, with an appendix setting out all of the Cabinet notes and matters in which Stuart Young recused himself from the Cabinet for the period 2016 to 2020. And I'm going to ask you all to produce this for the public, through you, and let the public see what I've recused myself from. And I explained it yesterday. The first note is the termination or appointment of the Board of Directors of the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center Management Company Limited. That is when the Cabinet decided to appoint my father, for the first time under PNM government, to give public service as the chairman of the IFC. Obviously, I recused myself from that note. The second is an award of a mandate to Republic Bank Limited to arrange a $2 billion. So Republic Bank is doing a $2 billion deal. I've seen in one shot. I've seen Kamla Prasad Bisesa now suggesting that my brother, the bank my brother works for, should only get a deal of, they've total deals is about 2.5 billion in total. But this is one deal to Republic Bank in early 2016 for $2 billion. The next one is appointment of co-lead arrangers and managers for the issuance of a US $1 billion bond. And do you know why I recuse myself from these notes? Because NCBGF was mentioned in the notes. That is already just in 2 notes there alone, $9 billion. Just 2 transactions, 9 billion TT dollars of transactions. You all will be provided with this. As you go through it, you will see the notes I've recused myself from. And all of these financial notes, apart from the first one in 2018, where NCBGFL was granted a mandate to arrange a 10-year fixed rate loan in the amount of $180 million for UDCOT with respect to Chancery Lane. $180 million in 2018. That was the first time that Cabinet awarded anything to NCBGF. You all will get this document and you can go through it and see all of the notes I recused myself from had nothing to do with the award of any mandate, right? The vast majority of them to NCBGF. It was because I was taking the precaution. This was provided on the 7th of July. The next thing is on Thursday night, I was being contacted by members of the media that Ms. Kamla Prasad Bisesa that just made accusations against me. I'd recused myself from 57 cabinet meetings. Recusal from a note is not a recusal from a cabinet meeting coming out of the whole meeting. As I say, you deal with scores of notes at every cabinet meeting. A note comes up, I recuse myself. I just don't participate on that note. I participate on everything else. She said 57 meetings and it's his brother and his corruption and his this and that. Completely rejected. So show the public and the people of Trinidad and Tobago what it is I've recused myself for. I let that pass. I gave a couple of the media houses a comment saying, yes, I recuse myself. I can't understand what the issue is because I genuinely could not understand. Recusal of yourself from a potential conflict is the right thing to do. It's the decent thing to do. That is how I measure myself as a public servant of Trinidad and Tobago. Lo and behold, the next thing I was alerted to at 4:20 p.m. on Friday, the 31st of July, Kamla Prasad Bisesa put out a statement from millionaire to billionaire P&M style. And this was sent to me. Stuart Young was forced to recuse himself from some 57 meetings of the cabinet due to possible conflicts of interest. Can you imagine that, etc. And again, launched into attack on my brother and listed the deals, which come up to, at maximum, 3.4% of the total financing over this period of time. Why not go directly to a commercial bank, which has, it shows once again, as we saw in Parliament, where the leader of the opposition did not even understand the shareholding of Atlantic LNG, that she has no concept and understanding of how financing is done, what an arrangement is done, how these things are done. And again, she goes on to attack the second largest indigenous financial institution, which is Jamaican owned. So that came out on Friday at 4:20 p.m., Friday the 31st of July. But I knew what this document of the 7th of July contained, which is the cabinet notes that I recused myself from. So I said I'll leave it. My brother had responded, his bank had responded, the Ministry of Finance had responded. I am about dignity and upholding office. I wasn't taking them on. What pushed it over the line, ladies and gentlemen, is yesterday I woke up on Saturday the 1st of August, 2020, to a story carried on page 16. Remember this page? Page 16 of the Express newspapers yesterday morning. Al-Rawi Young recused from cabinet 94 times. And then what disturbed me, on the left-hand side of that full page, is there were a number of tables. And in the tables, all of a sudden, a category, Father Richard Young acting as broker to the transaction. Another table, Young family, a shareholding company involved in the transaction. Then another table, Father Richard Young acting as broker to the transaction, and they're putting a money value. Brother Angus Young, CEO of NCB, GF, Young family, a shareholder in company. And then the last table, a suggestion the last table is dealing with A.J. Al-Rawi. When I saw these tables, I was flabbergasted, and I was wondering, where do they get that Richard Young has ever acted as a broker to the transaction and then putting a money value on it? People of Trinidad and Tobago, members of the media, without fear of contradiction, Richard Young has never acted as any broker to any transaction before the government of Trinidad and Tobago from 2015 to 2020. Richard Young is retired. He has never acted as a broker to any. So I was shocked, and I wondered, where would a reputable newspaper like the Express get this from? When I have the freedom of information here that says nothing about Richard Young acting, and it is not a fact. So how could a newspaper on page 16, Anna Ramdas, publish this? Well, the same way people get things in envelopes and anonymously, lo and behold, I was then sent a document with these tables that reflects exactly what was published there, produced by the UNC. It has nothing to do with the freedom of information provided under law, and I'm going to provide this to the members of the media. Some of you, I'm sure, may have it already, which is an exact reproduction of what the Express put out, with this complete fabrication of lies against my family, and in particular my retired father, my 70-year-old father. And this is what pained me and why I had to come to you all today. Accusing my father of acting as a broker to transactions before the government of Trinidad and putting a money value to it. All we have is our name. All we have is our reputation. That's all of us in this room, every citizen. And to have my father's name and my brother's name dragged in because I am a political bullseye pained me. But what disturbed me is I could kind of expect that from the UNC and Kamala Persad-Bissessar and her minions. How did that reach as page 16 of the Express newspaper yesterday, who never reached out to me for a comment? Where did this information come from that the Express would publish it on page 16? And if you go and look for page 16 now, you can't find it. Because by yesterday afternoon, the Express had removed page 16 from their online newspaper. So it now jumps from page 15 to page 17 on their online newspaper. This is what pushed me over. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. So you attack my father with UNC propaganda and lies. And then in a quick cover-up, without even coming to us to apologize or do anything, engage us. Because I put out a statement yesterday morning as I woke up and read this. The page disappeared from the newspaper. The page disappeared. So the newspaper by yesterday afternoon jumps from page 15 now to page 16. The online version that was put up the night before, my father told me, disappeared. But I didn't even take him on the night before when he reached out to me and asked, did you see this? Because I'm accustomed to being attacked and I know there's no merit to any of it. When I saw this in the newspaper yesterday morning on the online, and these categories, these tables, and I wonder, well, where do they get that Richard Young acted as a broker to any transaction? Ladies and gentlemen, my father has sought legal advice. I told him immediately seek legal advice. He will be pursuing his action. I am going to be pursuing action against Anna Ramdas, the Express newspaper, and probably the editor of the Express newspaper as well. Not because I want to, because I've let everything else slide before, because I believe in the freedom of the press. But when the newspaper would be so irresponsible to take a UNC-made document that has no basis in truth whatsoever, what happens next? I issued a statement yesterday morning setting out about the cabinet recusals because I thought I have a duty to the public to explain why I've recused myself. And in the first category is notes that had come up because as the minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, I was leading the charge against corruption matters. and the investigations into corrupt transactions under the Kamala Prasad Bisesa government. And I thought it right to recuse myself from the award of any contract. This morning in the newspaper, I see Kamala Prasad trying to spin that. Every single contract awarded under this government was on the basis of competitive tenders to contractors out of the Ministry of Works. But I am on affidavit in the United States. I, Stuart Young, have sworn affidavits in the courts of the United States following the money and pursuing some of these contractors. And there was no way I was going to sit there and be part of, because I'm a lawyer. And I understand when these matters get to court that they can then seek to try and cross-examine me and say, so you were pursuing these matters, you saw this evidence, but then you still went and participated in a war. And I don't want to have to defend that. I am here to protect the population of Trinidad and Tobago. That's the first category that I recuse myself from. And to see they try to spin on it and stuff, complete rubbish. And I can stand before anyone without fear. The second was my father, who was appointed as the chairman of the IFC, also appointed as a cabinet-appointed member of an implementation committee chaired by Mr. Christian Muti. And as I've stated publicly before, I recuse myself from any and every cabinet note. The next category was to do it NCBGF. I recuse myself from every cabinet note, as you'll see here, and I've explained carefully that once the name is mentioned, I recuse myself. I'm not interested on whether they come last, second or last. First, I just recuse myself and I never participate in any of it. And this is my younger brother, who's an employee. He's an employee, the CEO, but an employee. To see him attacked like that and his family attacked, and then Kamala Prasad Bisesa and her irresponsible behavior saying from millionaire to billionaire. I wish I was a millionaire. Giving up the last 5 years of my life in public service has not been easy, because it would have been the prime of my practice as an attorney. But I did it for Trinidad and Tobago, believe it or not. So I put out this statement yesterday. There's a last category. I am one of the founding members of Synergy TV and We Sport. So again, if they were ever mentioned, I recuse myself. I have not gotten a single dividend or cent from Synergy TV or We Sport since I've been a member of government. I wish they would pay me a dividend. But to see the Express, Anna Ramdas, and it had to go through an editor, run this yesterday, disturbed me, so I put out this statement. What is the next thing that happens? The next thing that happens is Kamala Prasad Bisesa, true to form, once the Express ran their story, comes out with Young's response to scandalous revelations over his recusals from cabinet meetings, raises more questions than answers. The continuation of this narrative. And I then saw in one of the newspapers this morning, they carried this. I am happy to add Kamala Prasad Bisesa as a defendant to the action. I've spoken to my attorneys this morning. I'm also going to be seeking senior counsel's advice, and I intend to pursue Anna Ramdas, the Express, maybe the editor, as well as Kamala Prasad Bisesa for this defamation. But I thought it important to come and share this information with you, the public, here this morning, and you, the members of the media. We need to be responsible. And the timing of this is what disturbed me. 1 week before an election. That is not by chance. And I've shown, Kamala Prasad Bisesa talks about it on Thursday night, drops a statement on Friday afternoon. Unfortunately, the Express newspaper, without checking and verifying information, and I hope to God they didn't have the freedom of information, because then they will have to explain, if you had the freedom of information, how do you get that Richard Young was broker to any transaction? I'm waiting for the day in court to hear that explanation. But I have now the UNC charts and tables that will show the population exactly what the Express published. And then let them come and explain why by yesterday afternoon, for the first time in history, a full page in their newspaper disappears from online. But it was printed, so it exists in print. And we also have the screenshots of it in the morning, and then the disappearance from page 15 to 17 now in the evening. This is all very disturbing, very upsetting. But the timing cannot be ignored. Exactly a week before, I accept that I am a political target, and I know why I am a political target. Because I know that there's no single person in the whole world that could come forward and say they have compromised Stuart Young. There's no person here anywhere that could come and say Stuart Young gave a favor, Stuart Young bent the rules. That always makes you enemy number one. Because people are always accustomed to yeas and nays and, yeah, I'll help you out here. I will help people. That's my job. But I will help you legally. So members of the media, I thank you all very much for your time, especially on a Sunday morning when we really should have been in a day of prayer. This is why I've asked you all here this morning, because I thought this important to explain to not only you, the members of the media, but the wider viewing and listening public of Trinidad. And I hope that you all will take it up responsibly and go with it. And I'm going to provide this full package of documents. I mean, this one was phenomenal. Breaking news. So when you went onto the Express link and you turned it, this is not the online newspaper. Sorry, the page you're looking for cannot be found. That was the online story the day before that they've removed it. I expect that. But to see them remove the full newspaper of page 16, so it now jumps from 15 to 17, that one blew my mind. Without ever reaching out to my family or myself. My father sat on the board of OCM. Put that down on record as well. My father sat on the board of OCM and then came off the board when I got involved in politics sometime after. That is the level of decency of the Young family. And to have my younger brother attacked, and to have my father attacked in this way based on UNC lies, complete fabrication of the truth, that Richard Young is acting as a broker to transactions, is what has pushed me over the line. I had a choice to make not too long ago, whether I would put myself back up for 5 years in this politics, having endured what I've done for the last 5 years. And the sole reason why I did it, without full family support, is because I felt that the country needed good and decent people to continue to serve, and God forbid that the UNC were to get back in office. And I would stand strong and fight at whatever sacrifice. Thank you all very much for your time. I'll take a few questions. I think I've covered everything that I need to from my perspective.
Yes, good morning. Clayton Clark, Radio Tambourine. Mr. Said, I just wanted to explain.
From Tobago?
Yes, I have something to be in Trinidad this weekend. Just explain, you mentioned you recuse yourself from the cabinet notes. Is that you left the room? Okay, just explain that.
Let me tell you what a recusal means. A recusal simply means you do not participate in discussion. It means that you don't participate in any deliberation, any decision making. So sometimes I'll leave the room. Other times I'll be told, look, what are you leaving the room for? You've recused yourself. NCBGF is not even in the running. They're number 10 out of 12 and we're only discussing number 1. Just sit down rather than disrupt. So that is what it means. Ma'am?
You mentioned that the only
Just identify yourself.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No
Soini Gray from CNC3. You mentioned that the only reason why you went back up for the next 5 years is because of your commitment to political office. I wanted to
not commitment to political office, commitment to country and to serve in public office, because I felt that I could not allow the UNC to make a steamroad into office.
And you also mentioned that it was against some of your family's advice. I wanted to ask, is your brother's professional career at risk because of what has happened here just now? Mm-hmm. And do you regret going back up? Like, is this your last 5 years in public office?
All right, let me. When they first started attacking my brother, I did have that fear. I did have that fear that he is a mere employee. And if I were in charge, the easiest thing to do, you have a decision to make. You stand with your employee or say, look, you've become a liability. His company, from Michael Leachin, who is one of the most famous businessmen in Canada, stood with him, Patrick Hilton, and I'd like to thank them for that. They stood with him because they knew there was no wrongdoing, and they've stood with my brother. It's not easy for him. And him being my younger brother, I have a great sense of responsibility. So I hope that his job is not at risk. He's certainly never done anything wrong. Every single transaction was a competitive transaction that the bank won, not him, and it's only 3.4%. I don't have regrets. All right, I've offered myself a service. I've offered myself to Trinidad and Tobago, and I will do the best I can.
And I just wanted to get clarity. You said you have reached out to your lawyers and you intend to sue Anna Ramdas, the editor, I'm assuming it's Umti, and Kamala Prasad-Bissesso. Is it that your lawyers are still exploring that option? Just clarity on that. I'm not a lawyer.
I am a lawyer and actually did some heavy defamation matters. For example, the Ken Julian versus the Express matter. I was junior counsel in that. When you engage lawyers, you need to give them instructions, you need to give them the information. This only happened yesterday. Yesterday is what pushed me over the line. I was busy yesterday. We're in the middle of a campaign as well. So I've not yet physically met with my lawyers, which is what I intend to do. And I expect them to say that I have a good case based on my legal knowledge, and I am going to pursue it. The defendants that I can see at this time are Kamala Prasad-Bissesso, the Express newspaper, the author Anna Ramdas. In the past, as an attorney, you've joined the editor because the editor has a responsibility. But that will be for the lawyers to decide. I have absolutely no pleasure in taking any action against the media. I've refrained from doing it for the 5-year period. Politicians are a different one. You step over the line. But even with that, when I was given the choice to sue Wademark, at the time I held back because I didn't want the country to stay in that mode. But now that they've continued with it and expanding it, I will take the legal action. Fortunately, I don't have to regret anything because I can still bring the action against them. Anybody else? Shalisa.
Morning, Minister.
Morning.
Shalisa Asnali from Guardian Media. You spoke about the timing of these documents. Yeah. Can you say if it was basically an action on the part of both the Express and the opposition leader to probably sway votes?
Absolutely. There's no doubt on the part of the UNC and the opposition is to sway votes. You're 1 week before an election, you have to do what you can, attack someone in office, attack Siot Young. They've been attacking Siot Young a lot in the last 5 years. The one that shocked me was the Express. I mean, you all would also recall, as I've told my lawyers, that I was the recipient of a front page editorial on a Sunday. Nobody gets a front page editorial on a Sunday with the nice bold writing, Stuart must go. So all of that will be add up, and I look forward to the Express explaining their decisions in court at that point in time.
Minister, good morning. While you've been addressing this issue, I'm just wondering, because of the new number of COVID-19 cases, we had 7 additional cases confirmed this morning, 4 yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
Overnight, yes.
Overnight. You had one, a prison officer, prisons service officer. The prisons administration building was closed and evacuated. Any updates in terms of this? Any additional concerns on the part of the government?
All right, I'd come here really to focus on but I will respond to you. As you know, I am part of the 3-member cabinet team with the Prime Minister and Minister of Health, so we're constantly being kept up to date. Last night, we settled the new regulations with the Attorney General from today, which will drop the number of persons in public gatherings from 25 to 10 as one of the first steps. I was in contact with the Commissioner of Prisons yesterday because I knew even before him that a prison officer tested positive, put the protocols, and actually told him he was going to ask the staff from the administration building to report to Golden Grove. I said, don't do that. I said, let the staff stay home, let the Ministry of Health do their work, let them do their contact tracing, let's keep the prison safe. I was at the prisons on Friday doing the largest passing out, and I want to keep the prisons free of COVID, and we will do all that we have to. So that's on the prison side. We've also had a fire officer test positive towards the end of last week. So we're dealing with that situation as well. We've had a number of police officers. So I've been on the phone constantly with the Commissioner of Police. You all would have seen the administration building, Riverside shut down, sanitized. Ministry of Health is working with everyone with respect to these issues and will continue to do so responsibly, and they have the full support of the Ministry of National Security and the various heads, the Commissioner of Police, Commissioner of Prisons, Chief Fire Officer, and these personnel as we do all that needs to be done with respect to COVID.
Just a follow-up, the fire officer, was it on while the officer was on duty, or?
I'm not quite sure. I think it was the same sort of office arrangement, and this type of thing. The prison officer, fortunately, was not at work. He had just come into the administration. He was on vacation to get something done. But as it goes with contact tracing, we're tracking down the primary contacts and doing what needs to be done.
And just one other follow-up, Minister. On this particular issue, is there a point with any increase of cases as we are seeing? Is there a threshold number that could cause the government to have a look at the issue of the general election?
That is a question for the Prime Minister. We will continue, as the Prime Minister said at the press conference on Friday. Yes, thank you. The Prime Minister, that hasn't arisen as yet, but we will continue to be guided by the health experts. Just now, Shirley, I think Sean has, yeah.
Yeah. This thing with, if there's like the incubation period, if it's
All
like
right,
14 days, but these things, is this like illegal immigrants coming in?
Let me just make it clear. This press conference was to deal with the issues I dealt with. This is not a COVID press conference, and I don't see what the incubation period has to do with illegal immigrants at all. Right now, there's been no contact, no proven contact. That is for Ministry of Health to talk about whether they have any. When you're doing contact tracing, what you're doing is you're going from primary contacts and you're trying to trace it backwards and that type of thing. What we're seeing is it is a lot of, let me not say anything. So right now, we're not down that road. The 14-day incubation period is a scientific thing that the world has been using. So I'm not quite sure what your question is with respect to...
Well, if we have had an isolated population here, about, let's say, 3 months, but then you're getting these things arising, is it like people coming in?
Well, that is the speculation. I don't buy that speculation. What you have is, understand this is a new virus globally. So it's 6 months of this virus being here. You have different people reacting different ways, but I am not a doctor. So save that for the doctors tomorrow morning, and they will deal with those. Yes, today is Sunday, tomorrow morning. I'm not going to deal with any more COVID-related questions. This is not a press conference for COVID.
Okay, I was just going to ask about the prisoners with this prison officer getting sick, if there's
As I say,
any...
the prison officer was on leave. He went into the admin building, which is in Port of Spain, Phillip Street, so it has nothing to do with prisoners in prison. All right? Any other questions related to what we came to? Yes, Shalisa?
Any location with regards to the people, location in terms of finding those...
Watch me, I just said that I'm not dealing with any more COVID.
Last question, Minister. Who
As always, the famous last words of the media.
Location of people or persons who it is believed contracted the virus elsewhere and brought it into the country.
Sorry, well, we've been having re-imported cases, persons who come into the country, meaning that we allow them to come in, we put them into state quarantine or state quarantine facilities, and that has been adding to the number of persons who have tested positive for COVID. Of course, you've had thousands of people, as the Prime Minister pointed out, come back into the country. So I don't want to speculate as to where this comes in. It could possibly be persons who've come back in, completed their quarantine, but been asymptomatic whilst in quarantine, and then come out. I mean, it is a very new virus. You have cases around the world where persons 47 days later then test positive. So it's new. I am not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. So I'm not going to speculate. I'll leave that up to the medical professionals who have guided us throughout.
Minister Young, you mentioned the timing of the release of the documents. I don't know if you had a chance to reflect on leading up to the last general election, any similar approach made in terms of trying to smear the then opposition leader, Dr. Rowley?
I think the only politician who is attacked more than I am, certainly on the PNM side, is Dr. Rowley. In fact, in conversations with him yesterday, I was telling him that I derive a level of strength from seeing how strong he has been over the past years. Yeah, they continue to attack him, and they always do it closer to the election, but there's nothing there. This spurious allegation, you can't come at me, so you make up a lie about my father, that's unacceptable. I'm not saying that a lie on me is acceptable from my point of view, but in public life, you get attacked. But to now come up with something, and I want an explanation for this. Father Richard Young acting as broker to the transaction. Where does that come from? Because it is simply not true. All right? Anyone else? I'd like to thank you all very much for your time here. As usual, it's been a pleasure interacting with you all. And just stay safe out there, please. Thank you.